Okay, so I'm a jewelry historian. That means that I don't make jewelry and I don't buy or sell jewelry. I just look at it. And let's see, this works. So I'm actually an Egyptologist, trained as an archaeologist turned jewelry historian. I do a lot with creating exhibitions. I do consultancy for museums, and I'm also the director of my nonprofit, the Kilara Foundation, which aims to reconnect jewelry that has been collected with the people that made it. And I'm going to go into that in a second. But the departing point for my talk here today is an exhibition I visited last year in London in the British Museum, which showed jewelry from modern-day current Omani female silversmiths alongside traditional jewelry that is in the museum's collections. And this is a growing trend that you see, that jewelry from the Middle East features in more modern creations. Now, that sometimes may get you thinking, can't they make up anything new? How is this innovation? How is this actually design? And in order to understand the importance of traditional jewelry for jewelry designers of today, I'm going to take you back into the past for a little. Because understanding the importance of jewelry, the previous speaker just said it's more than just pretty. It actually carries history, it carries emotions, it carries identity. That is exactly what jewelry from the Middle East and North Africa does. So I'm going to take you back into the past a little when jewelry functioned as capital and as amulet. So in both ways, a form of security. Although they can actually also be actual security. There are pretty mean bracelets out there that are actually intended to swing a punch at someone, to identity and values that it may have today and in the future. So one of the main things to keep in mind is that jewelry from the Middle East is intended as an asset. Its main aspect is that it's literally your savings account that you're wearing, and that is also what accounts for the size of these jewels. We know them as bulky, as large. The value of the jewelry is in the precious metal used. So it's not bought or created as an investment as we would do today. It's created as safeguarding your wealth. And so here you see a woman from Morocco wearing these huge clothing pins in solid silver. They're quite heavy affairs. A Yemeni necklace and an Omani anklet, which are all very heavy and solid because they actually form the wealth of the person who's wearing it. And this also ties into a very different way of dealing with money than we are used to nowadays. We have insurances for everything. We have our travel insurance, you have your health insurance. If your car breaks down, I hope you're insured. But when you're from a more traditional society, everything has to be paid in cash. And that means that you will have to be able to afford that right then and there. So you would be wearing as much silver as you could to have that money ready with you. So here you see a Palestinian woman dressed in her bridal attire. She's from Bethlehem. And a headdress arakia next to that with a series of very silver, very heavy coins, the Maria Theresia thalers, which are very favorite because of their guaranteed silver content. Even the little pins and your amulet containers would be made of something precious so you could sell it when needed. And that is very much necessary in today's world where currency is still unstable. You can have an amount of bank notes that is worth less or half of what it is worth today. So the sensible thing to do is to invest in jewelry. It still happens. So that is a deeply felt notion that makes jewelry way more than just an accessory. And that is also how it functions in informal microfinancing groups. These are informal circles set up by women who would chop everything together. There's a saying in Arabic that means that, well, translates to bracelets are for the difficult times. That is, you actually invest in your bracelets until you need to sell them again. And this is a form of microfinancing that is still being practiced today. So if you needed money, you would form a group with, like, say, 10 people. Everyone drops in 10 of whatever your currency is in the common pot. You have 100, you buy a bracelet for the first beneficiary. The next month you buy one for the second. The third month you buy one for the third. Everyone is able to increase their wealth by sharing. And this is a form of microfinancing that I wonder if modern microfinancing initiatives by banks actually have an eye on, if they know that this is actually what's happening. The second function that we need to understand of jewelry to understand traditions in the future is that of an amulet. Now, that glowing blue eye that you see on the screen, the evil eye, is nothing more than jealousy. It's giving each other the furtive look like, I want what you have. That will cause bad luck on a person. And as jewelry is worn so closely on the body, it's the perfect barrier for those kinds of glances. It literally shields you. You can see my jewelry, but I can feel it wearing it on my body. So that is what jewelry as an amulet does. And almost all of it has this function. That is something that is important to keep in mind. It works in various ways, through colors, for example. No color is ever chosen just randomly or because it fits so well with our eyes or our outfit. So ranging from red, which is the color of the heart, of blood, of love, of life, through the orange, yellow colors of sunlight and growth, the vegetation in green, and the cooling shades of blue, there is always meaning to colors in Middle Eastern jewelry. That also goes to imagery. We associate the moon and the single star as an ultimate Islamic symbol, but it's way older than that. Moon imagery is actually found since prehistoric times, because before we had watches, and you've seen this wonderful haul of timepieces here on the fair, before we had that, the moon was the way that we kept track of time, because its cycle of 28 days is very easy to track. And there's another thing that has 28 days in the cycle, and that's the female cycle. So here you see the association with life and growth again. Moon imagery, as you see it here in jewelry, is way older than any of the three religions that we know in the region right now. That also goes for the combination of crescents and stars. Star systems are incredibly important in keeping track of time. So the 5, 6, or even 8-pointed star that we now associate with Judaism is actually very important for all three main religions and is older than all of these three religions. So before we had watches, this is what we used to keep track of time. And this tells us about the way that the people wearing this jewelry lived. This is a Palestinian nose ring combining several crescents with stars. And the little shape in the center is a hand, which I will get to in a second. So here again, you see this old imagery being used. Architecture is also very defining for shapes in jewelry because it connects us to religion and faith. What you see here is the traditional shape of mosques, but also of the mihrab, the prayer niche that you will find in any mosque. Incorporating this in your jewelry will actually bring the protection of your faith onto you. So you will express your faith and simultaneously you will be protected by it. This is very much linking jewelry to the people that are wearing it. The eye beads that we now associate with Middle Eastern jewelry are so incredibly old. You see this eye here that is floating above the word beads. That is a Roman eye bead that I excavated in Egypt. It's about 2,000 years old. And the beaded chain that you see next to it with the eyes painted on it, that puts it back another 1,500 years. That's from ancient Egypt. And that was meant to protect the horse. Now, the thing what eye beads do is they deflect that gaze that I was just talking about. So anyone looking at you will be deflected by these eye beads. This is a tradition that also goes back almost to prehistoric times. So we associate it now with the Middle East, but you find it everywhere, even in Europe. The hands, I promised I was going to talk about that. Hand imagery is also something that goes back to prehistoric times. Because leaving an impression of your hand is the most powerful expression of saying, we were here, I was here. And showing a hand with the hand outstretched like so is very defensive. It keeps evil at a distance, while the giving hand may give blessings. And these are forms that we also see way back from Egypt. The tiny hand that you see on the left is from ancient Egypt again, and this beautiful glowing carnelian intaglio, representing again the color of blood and of life. And the giving hand is an amulet from Roman times. In the middle, you see a funerary stela from Tunisia, where you see two hands in prayer and adoration to the goddess of Tanit. Also, again, predating all three main religions by, well, thousands of years. Hand amulets, we all know them from North Africa as a very quintessential North African form, the hand of Fatima, it's often called. When you look at these shapes, you see that each single one of them is different. They have been collected over a period of 20 years. They cover a period of 100 years in their age, and they're all different for certain regions, for certain tribes, for certain villages, but they carry that same meaning of protection. So what I wanted to show you with this is that the designs that we take for granted, the eye, the hand, the moon imagery, is actually deeply, deeply rooted in culture, and it traces back for millennia. So it's not just Islamic, it's not just Judaistic, it's not just Christian, it's way older, and these are very human designs. But of course, everywhere in the world, fashion changes. Here you have the 50s, the 60s, and the very recognizable 70s in Lebanon, where you see that traditional jewelry and traditional dress is no longer worn. I'm also not exactly standing in front of you here wearing traditional Dutch dress today, because the world changes and jewelry changes with it. With that comes practical changes. There is no longer need to be wearing these huge clothing pins, the fibulas, to close your clothing in an era where we have Velcro and buttons and zippers and much easier clothing. So you will not be wearing this. You will also not be investing your wealth in these pieces anymore, because there are other shapes that now carry on this wealth. That can be your bank account, but it can also be different forms of jewelry. So after the Second World War, jewelry started to be sold off massively. The silver traditional jewelry that you see here. Remember, this is an asset. This is money that you have lying around. So that is mainly why it's being sold off. Not because they didn't care anymore, but because it would be foolish to leave your bank account, well, just lying on the table. So this is a dish of pendants as was photographed in Libya. These silver pendants would once be worn by women who wanted to have children or just gotten children. And here you see all of these hopes and dreams on a platter. It was used to buy new jewelry. The gold jewelry that after the oil boom from the 1970s became increasingly popular in the Middle East. So that is one way of selling your jewelry to exchange your silver for your gold jewels. And it continues today. You can buy jewelry in the souks of Marrakesh. You can buy jewelry in Cairo. You can buy jewelry online if you want to. So the funny thing is, if it's still being sold today, how can this be heritage? What is the importance that it carries if it's still being sold? That is what we find in its design. So here you see a bracelet, the silver bracelet is from Libya. It's an ancient design that is no longer worn, but it's been translated into a new gold shape that was photographed in a shop window in Tripoli, also in Libya. So you see how this form changes, the meaning stays intact, but it's still an entirely different bracelet. Coin jewelry, that continues to be extremely, extremely important. These coins are not worth anything except their weight in gold. But the image of the coin is so deeply ingrained in the DNA of jewelry from the Middle East that it continues to be created. So you will find lots of imitation coins and, sometimes even actual coins in designs of today. And now you know where that is coming from. What we see happening is that traditional jewelry is being translated into new interpretations. The earrings that you see here were created by Fatma al-Najjar, an Omani designer. And to me, these are instantly recognizable as Omani because of the 3 dangles that you see below, the shape of the outline of the jewel itself, but the rose quartz in it, the pinkish rose quartz, does not belong there. It's not one of the standard things of Omani jewelry. That is her addition. She actually layers the meaning of rose quartz into the traditional shape that she has inherited from her ancestors. Another example that I wanted to show you today is the brand Cuckoo Jewelry from Sudan, which creates both traditional jewelry and a modern translation of that. Nizreen Cuckoo is a designer who caters to both traditional forms, and you see the photograph on the right is a lady that was photographed by Margot Vieillon in the 1970s. She is wearing her traditional festive outfit, as is no longer worn in Sudan. The necklace right next to it is also part of that outfit. The ensemble that you see in the center is new. It's made by Nizreen. And you see it's almost indiscernible from the traditional jewelry on the lady on the right. But she also takes the same design. If you look at the medallions, she translates that into very wearable bracelets that can be worn on an everyday basis for someone who does not wear traditional dress anymore. So Cuckoo Jewelry goes both ways in their redesigning of jewelry. Another example is this brand from Algeria. This is traditional jewelry from the Kabyle region, which is in the north of Algeria, very, very famous for their color palette, their use of enamel and coral. And as you see on the image on the left, this is very heavy jewelry. It's heavy, studded with coral, it's enameled. It weighs a ton. You see here again the lady wearing these clothing pins. And on the image below, you also see these necklaces and a round brooch, which are quite sizable and quite heavy. The piece in the center on top was created after 1962, which is when Algeria became independent and started creating the same language, the same visual language, but in a much lighter, easier, wearable way. And the lady on the left is a model for Kabylie Bijou, which is a brand in France, which caters to young people who still distinctly feel Algerian Kabyle, but are living in Europe. So this jewelry allows them to express their identity, link them to their ancestral jewelry, and still look modern, if that is a word that you could use in these circumstances. You will also find jewelry in art. This is an artwork by Alia Derouish, one of the artists that work together in a group called the Imaginarium of Photograph Women. This is a group that was created by Salma Ahmed Kaller, who invites the biracial, so bi-ethnic artists to deal with their own heritage as it has been seen by Western photographers. Because jewelry was also used a lot in photographs. Stage models around in the 19th, early 20th century that would convey the exotic of the Middle East, the exotic of the Orient. It is sort of creating an image that never quite comports to the actual people. And in these art forms, jewelry is again used to shield these women from a sort of Western gaze and express their own identity. And the final example that I wanted to show you is the question that Raissa Ley poses. She is the creative director of Kif Kif Bledi, a dance group in Paris that performs traditional dances from North Africa. And she wonders why Amazigh, that is the indigenous people of North Africa, why their tribal art is used in dance in the USA, in these tribal fusion belly dance activities. To the performance, that's their art. That's the way that they dress up. To her, it's her heritage. And that brings us in something of a more difficult debate. We have fundamentally different views of what this jewelry represents. For the people that come from these cultures themselves, this is a very strong way of connecting with your own identity, with showing this is who I am culturally, this is where I come from. And this is my connection to my ancestral roots. For people in the West, to cultural outsiders, the people who bought this on hippie trails and continue to buy this in, well, Marrakesh or Cairo, it's a souvenir. It's like a fashion accessory. It's something that you use, but it doesn't have that same profound meaning that it has for the people that created it. And I wanted to end this talk with showing you 3 different examples of how that plays out, these fundamental different views. There is jewelry in the dance world. How does it feel when a white person is wearing your heritage pinned on their bra and has no idea wherever your country even is located on a map? So is jewelry just for accessorizing in these cases? What other powers does it have, and what might it mean to the cultures that it comes from? There is a lot of debate and work being done in the dance world right now around this very topic. There is jewelry in commerce, and that's where we get into the cultural appropriation debate. Because who stands to gain financially from copying and creating jewelry? When is it cultural exchange and when is it cultural appropriation? This is a very heated debate, and not to insult you all on this beautiful fair, but this is a picture that I took from the Chinese mass export site, the AliExpress, and each of these things costs less than $1. So how is this heritage being worked into these pieces, and what does that actually mean? And there is this wonderful example of Turquoise Mountain that actually brings jewelry into the future. Turquoise Mountain is an NGO that creates learning opportunities for refugees in the Middle East. So started in Afghanistan, now they also have a brand in Jordan that I worked with. And they create jewelry making programs for women in order to empower them economically. They learn a trade, they can actually make a living by creating jewelry, but it also connects them very much to their roots. And as one of the participants told me, it's incredibly grounding and rewarding to be working with your own jewelry when you have been displaced. And to be able to make a living out of your own culture and to make sure that it doesn't just disappear is incredibly important. So the Turquoise Mountain program, well, is the, you could say, breeding ground for a lot of young designers in the Middle East. So with that, I'm at the end of my talk, in which I hope to bring across the point that traditional jewelry in modern designs from the Middle East and North Africa is not just being stuck in the past or being incapable of coming up with something new. It's actually very much expressing your own identity in a changing world. What you see here is the work of Azaf Hachmi, an Egyptian designer who translates her own historic heritage into modern designs. And the eye in the center with the 3 pearls is the work of Palestinian designer Mai Zarqawi, who created this many years ago. She called it the weeping eye, and today I think we can all feel how very, very apt that is. So designing based on heritage is bringing an entire identity and people into the future. That is what I wanted to share with you today. If you have any questions or things, come find me on my website or after this talk. And thank you for your attention so far.